Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another episode of CAOverwatch. I am one of your hosts, Spencer. With me, as always, is Chris. On today, we have a pretty unique episode for you guys. Today, we are just simply going to break down the playoffs for you and talk about sort of how far we think the Toronto Defiant can go, as well as give our predictions for the whole bracket as a whole. So again, I'm Spencer, and this is Chris. Chris, how's it going?
Pretty good. I'm super excited to talk a little bit more about other teams that are not Toronto Defiant.
Yeah, because this is going to be a pretty general thing. I mean, we'll more focus on Toronto Defiant. You know, we'll definitely talk about like what we think their ceiling is throughout this entire thing, whether or not it's, one win or two. But you'll hear those thoughts there on the show, but or zero. But we'll get into that in a little bit. I think we're just going to start off with just kind of giving our bracket breakdown because things start pretty soon. I believe the first game is Thursday, so we're running out of time here. So without further ado, let's jump right into it. The first couple of matches are actually kind of interesting. I mean, Houston versus Boston, in my opinion, is a bit of a wash. I think Houston wins. I don't think you have any objections to that.
And then Washington Justice versus Vancouver Titans.
Well, I mean, I said the reason I said I don't think you have any objections to that was I was hoping to hear if you also agreed with me, right? Like I paused so that you could be like, "You're right, Spencer. I have no objections to that," or you could be like, "Actually, I think Boston has a chance, and here's why."
You know what? I may have misheard what you said. So great start. Great start to the podcast. I do not have any objections.
Okay. I was like awkward silence, but I had to make the most out of it. Okay, I agree. Yeah. I think Houston's gonna win. I think it's a no-brainer.
No-brainer.
Washington, Vancouver is actually a little bit interesting to me. This is one that I think for the most part I thought it was going to be Vancouver until I really sat down and I was like, man, I forgot that Decay is currently on Washington.
He is, but it doesn't seem like he's helped out a hell of a lot.
I don't disagree, but has he helped out enough to beat the Vancouver Titans?
I don't know. I think on Vancouver Titans, when they're on their game and, they have Shockwave popping off, Shredlock doing well, and Dalton doing well, I think they have the potential to be Washington Justice, and I think they're going to advance.
I'm glad you make that pick and representing Canada because I actually do think that this will be a close game. I think some people are saying Washington it's going to be a wash. They're going to 3-0 them because of Decay, and I don't think so. I think you're right. I think Vancouver's shown that they have some potential, and depending on how the meta is, like if they can somehow run double hit scan, Dalton Shockwave, or if it's again like a Sombra, whatever, Dasama Tracer or something like that, I think that this can actually be a pretty good meta for this team. So I think it's definitely possible. But at the end of the day, I think Decay is the best player on the field, and I'm always going to give it to the team with the best player. So I actually think Washington has it, although I don't think it affects the bracket too much moving forward because the LA Gladiators get their first pick. Now, some people suggest that the LA Gladiators will pick the Toronto Defiant if they get the opportunity to pick first, assuming either Washington or Vancouver wins. However, I kind of disagree. I think Gladiators pick Washington. I think Atlanta picks Toronto, and then I think Houston ends up playing Dallas. So, what are your sort of thoughts on how the draft system is going to work?
Honestly, I think if there's any, usually I would always say that Washington is going to be a team that's picked first over Toronto Defiant.
Yeah.
But I don't think Toronto Defiant's given me enough reason to believe that that's not going to, or that that's going to be the case. So I actually think that Toronto Defiant's going to be picked first because, I think our past couple games have been pretty disappointing.
Yeah.
Specifically disappointing against the big loss against Dallas Fuel. So I feel like Los Angeles Gladiators are going to pick us first. But even if they don't, and Atlanta Reign picks us, I don't have much confidence.
So I know that I was watching, I believe it's Plat Chat like a week ago, and they were talking about how a lot of teams took the previous patch seriously. They're like, we talked to a couple of different teams. They were scrimming on the previous patch. They wanted to win those final 2 games of the season. And then somebody was like, oh, did you talk to Paris? And then they're like, no, we didn't ask Paris. And I thought that was interesting because Toronto is notorious for scrimming with Paris, and Toronto also made the tweets about not caring about the previous week's meta and focusing on this. So I wonder if Toronto and Paris have just been scrimming this new patch for the past 2 weeks, and we actually have some sort of advantage going in to this bracket sort of playoff because we're actually more like 2 weeks ahead of everybody else. So I actually have some faith in Toronto. So I think if we go up against LA, I do think they actually beat us. I have LA picking Washington, so I have LA beating Washington. I think that like while Decay is really good, I think that this meta might actually suit the Gladiators pretty well, especially if it's like a Zarya Winston dive. They seem to put a mirror on that Zarya, and I think OG is a fantastic monkey, and or even if it's like a hog Zarya, right? You could have mirror on the Zarya, and then Space can play the monkey. Like, there's like a lot of pretty good looks that Gladiators can throw. I think they've looked like a really good team since Kevs just came in the lineup. They were, in my opinion, a top 5 team going into the year. I know they haven't shown it, but I've always believed in this roster, and I think that they can potentially make a run. I actually have the Toronto Defiant beating the Atlanta Reign for the reason that I previously stated. I know Atlanta just brought San Francisco to 5 games, but I think if it's a Monkey Zarya meta, I don't know if Gator can play the Monkey to the level of which he like some of the other main tanks in the league, including Numlocked. I think Monkey Zarya, like Nevix can play the Zarya. If it is a double off tank with like a Hog Zarya, I think Nevix is extremely flexible, can play either of them. We have so many DPS players in the lineup. Maybe we do see, Sure4 come in there playing a Road Hog or something like that. God, we were showing Roki Cruz at points. Maybe we were showing Roki Cruz because Kareem's going to be playing the Hog. You know what I mean? Like, who knows, man? The kind of stuff that we might throw up against there. So I actually think Toronto has a legitimate chance. And then I think Houston beats Dallas because I think that if it's a Sombra Monkey dive, I think that actually fits into their wheelhouse really well, as well as the fact that I think Hydration is an extremely flexible player. So if it is like a Hog Zarya meta, you can see Hydration pull out the Hog and perform very well.
Yeah, you know what? Those are a lot of good insights, and I agree with them for the most part. But to be honest, I'm just gonna go the pessimistic route during this podcast. I'm just gonna say that I think Atlanta wins.
You think Atlanta takes it from us, even if it's a Monkey Zarya meta? You think Gator can just out monkey us?
Yeah, Gator's obviously also just one factor of a 6-man team. Even regardless of the tweets that we got saying that Toronto was focusing on this meta, they still haven't given me enough. They haven't given me enough reason to believe in them, even when they were, focusing on other metas during the year.
Mm-hmm.
Even before this meta where they weren't focusing on it, they were still losing games.
Okay.
They still weren't performing, and we still weren't seeing, I think, the optimal team that I'd like to see out there.
Yeah.
And I have reason to believe. I genuinely don't believe we will see that optimal team out there. Sure, I don't think we'll see them. So I just don't really have the confidence in this team, just because it's, to me, it doesn't seem like too stable of a team right now.
Yeah,
and Atlanta seems a little more stable.
I think for the most part, I do agree, because I think that I do agree. If it's a Sombra meta, we don't see Sure4 in the Sombra, I think this team's an issue or is in trouble. I don't know if Zik can cut it. I mean, I assume he would have improved after a previous game. I'm kind of assuming that we can put our best roster forward. If that's not the case, I definitely think Atlanta takes the win. Regardless, I think that the next one's pretty similar. I think Philadelphia is going to pick either Atlanta or Toronto, whichever one comes out on top. And then I think San Francisco probably picks Houston. Do you agree Houston takes Dallas? I think Houston, this actually might line up really well for Houston with the flexible main tank and hydration, as well as a Sombra sort of meta.
Yeah, I think Houston does take Dallas. I think it's going to be close because Dallas have had some good games in the past.
Okay.
But it's going to be an exciting game to see. It's going to be a battle for Texas. And,
looking forward to it.
Yeah.
So I think, my draft, at least the way I see it going out, is Philadelphia picks Toronto Defiant or Atlanta Reign, whoever wins that matchup. San Francisco probably takes Houston Outlaws. I actually think Paris would take the Valiant, because I think Gladiators are actually a really dangerous team. I think a lot of teams know they're a dangerous team. And then I have Florida Mayhem taking the LA Gladiators. So to start it off, Philadelphia versus Toronto Defiant. I would love to see Toronto get the redemption that they so sweetly want, but I can't see a world in which it happens, regardless of the meta. Even if we've had a 2-week scrim advantage, I think Philadelphia is just too good of a team. I would love to pick Toronto, but I just can't. And I assume you're on the same page here?
Yeah, even if we, for some reason, beat Atlanta, I don't see us beating Philadelphia.
They're too good.
I also thought that it was a little more of a branch system where, let's say LA was playing Washington, the winner of that will go to play Philly. But that's it's not the case.
What I thought, but according to the bracket builder, no. On the bracket builder on the Overwatch League website, it still allows you to draft.
That's weird because I'm looking.
I can hear you. Sorry, you keep taking away from the mic. You gotta.
Sorry. I don't have the boom stand right now. When I'm looking at the trees in the bracket builder,
yeah, I know
it looks like it feeds into the thing, right?
Yeah, but then you have to draft it yourself, and I saw Platchat do it, and they also drafted it themselves. So
Okay.
Let's just go with that. Obviously, that could change, but I think that makes sense.
Yeah.
Either way, I have San Francisco going up against the Houston Outlaws.
Yeah.
I think San Francisco
And
wins.
winning.
They're just too good.
Of course.
Regardless of the meta. I think a dive meta would actually be somewhat weak for them. I think if you worst case scenario, like a monkey potential meta. But honestly, I even as I'm saying that Smurf's so good, I'm just trying to like pick apart this team. You know, I'm just grasping for straws at this point. Yeah, they beat Houston. Paris versus Valiant could be interesting. I think Paris wins because they have so many DPS. I think they're just so flexible. And I do think that Valiant would struggle in a Sombra meta. Because we've only really seen Valiant play really, really well in Ashe Tracer. And this isn't that. So I think Paris can actually expose them and come out on top here.
Let's also be clear. Like, I really don't think we're going to have any idea what the meta is.
Yeah. But I don't disagree. But I think people are saying Monkey Zarya. I think that's the general consensus in North America, at least. I heard APAC's crazy. But agreed.
Yeah. Okay, so
I kind of made this assuming it's a Monkey Zarya meta. I kind of made it the Sombra Monkey Zarya dive. Somebody's going to run that. You know, one team's going to run that meta, so I just don't see a which hog. Maybe it is a hog thing. That'll throw this whole out the window. But either way, I think Paris is a more flexible team. I think Valiant have looked really good when they can run Shax on the Tracer and KSP on the Ashe. They've looked less good whenever they've had to adapt. And this is, I think, really going to be an adaptable meta, so I have Paris taking it. Then you get just the winner's bracket. We'll do that real quick. Florida versus Philadelphia. Oh, sorry. I actually have Florida Mayhem beating the Gladiators the first go-around. That's a really close game. I don't know if you agree or not, but that to me, that's a really close game. I actually wasn't sure about this one.
Honestly, I don't know enough about the two teams to really call it, but I just, Florida's had better success from the past, so I called them.
Yeah, makes sense. Philadelphia, I think, beats Florida. They're too good. I think San Francisco beats Paris. They're too good. I know at some point, guys, I'm not going to break this down. I just think they're just too good of teams. They have too many people who can play too many roles, so it doesn't matter about the meta. They're too well coached. They're going to figure it out. They're going to be able to perform. I think those are your two teams that are going to the finals. Let's go to the losers bracket. The way this shapes out is Toronto Defiant plays the LA Gladiators, which would be extremely unfortunate. I think, once again, if that's the case, Toronto gets knocked out by the Gladiators. Obviously, if there's another team comes against Toronto, they might be able to have a chance. Like, I think it's possible. Like, I think if if Gladiators beats the Mayhem, then Toronto plays the Mayhem. And I low-key think that's like, nah, that's just as hard of a game. I take it back. I think this is as far as we go.
I don't have us making it there, so.
Yeah, well, then you probably the Atlanta Reign. So who do you have between the LA Gladiators and the Atlanta Reign?
I had LA Gladiators.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. LA Gladiators, and if it was Fuel and Valiant, I had a Valiant.
Yeah.
And then Valiant gets beat by Florida Mayhem.
So we're going to start this here because you have Fuel losing to Valiant. I actually have the Outlaws beating the LA Valiant. I think if it's a Sombra dive meta, I think that the Houston Outlaws actually might really line up in this meta because like Dante looked so good on the Sombra.
Yeah.
And Hydration is so flexible as a player. And Mecca is such a good off tank, and there's Jexay is a good main support, right? They have like a good support line, a good system around it. I just think that if it's a Sombra meta and Dante can pop off, like you might actually see this team perform really well. And I just have no faith in LA outside of the Tracer Ashe meta.
You're right. I could see a world where that is a thing, where Mecca and them really pop off and Dante pops off, and yeah, there's definitely that possibility there. Obviously, like with a team like that, it seems like when they're on, they're on, and when they're not, they're not. So I think we'll get a good catalyst to that.
Yeah.
From the first game or two.
Yeah.
Litmus test.
I agree. Another interesting one to me is I have the LA Gladiators going up against the Paris Eternal. And I actually have LA winning that game. Now, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, my thoughts are that you're crazy. I think that Ben Best is just, the better tank and
over OGE.
I don't know. He's been on and off. He's been on and off.
His Orissa's look good. I think Ben Best has had a really good Orissa. He's known for his Reinhardt. I think if it's Winston, you're going to see No Smite play. I don't think you'll see Ben Best in there for the month.
Your whole argument off of that.
I just don't know what else it'll be. Even if it's double off tank, I don't think you're going to see a Ryan. I don't think you're going to see an Orisa.
Okay.
I think OGE plays almost all the roles better except for maybe an Orisa.
I see XE just dominating those still.
That's a better point. XC and Soon are really good. Sparkle's really good. I could definitely see the DPS sort of like making a run at this. I have the Gladiators going. I think I'm actually going really far. And I actually have the Houston Outlaws. No, I'm changing that. I have the Florida Mayhem beating the Houston Outlaws. I have the Houston Outlaws beating the Florida Mayhem, but that's too much for me. Even I can't swallow that. Because I think that even if it's a Sombra dive meta, like Florida, BKB is a really good Sombra, and Yaki's like an MVP candidate. I think that they're just better than Houston.
Paris Eternal against Florida. I had Paris Eternal winning.
I have the Gladiators winning. So I think we both agree that the Florida Mayhem will lose to whoever wins that game. I think for the Gladiators, they're just, again, if they're going to have to beat Paris, they're going to have to beat Florida. And I think if Paris, because their DPS is so deep and because they can show so many different looks, I actually really like their potential.
Yeah.
So I have Gladiators beating Florida, but you have whatever, Paris Eternal. And then I think we now have the winner's bracket, which would be Philadelphia Fusion versus the San Francisco Shock. Who do you think is going to win that one?
I had Philly.
Interesting.
I had Philly.
Because of why?
So basically, they beat them before, and they just. It's hard to say with these two teams. Like they're both flipping stacked.
Yeah. I don't disagree.
I just believe I have this faith in Carpe that he's going to be able to pull it out when it means most.
Yeah. And I mean, you could definitely argue that like San Francisco, they won last year. They're a little bit less motivated. Philadelphia just beat them in the most recent performance, 3-0. Some people could also argue that might have lit a fire under San Francisco and they're going to come back better than ever. I think it's a tough game to call. I think when push comes to shove, I take the team that's done it before. People are like using the fact that they won last year as like a detriment to them. I'm using it as a positive. This is a team that knows what it takes to win. This is a team with a championship roster, and I think if the heroes can line up and they can play the players the characters are good at and they want to play, I will always pick San Francisco when it comes down to showtime.
That's totally doable.
But either way, I have the Gladiators in the losers finals, and you probably have, who do you have again? Paris. I think we can both agree that they would lose to either Philly or San Francisco. Am I correct in saying that? I think that these have been the best two teams all year. I mean, I don't toot my own horn. I called Philadelphia at the beginning of the year when everybody was putting them in the 5, 6, 7 position. I put them at my third best team in the entire league, and then included the APAC teams, and I stand by that decision today. I think they're going to make it.
So do you want to go over APAC teams real quick?
Yeah, let's do it quickly because obviously I've watched recaps and I've watched some of the games, but I haven't watched it to the same degree of which I've watched NA.
Let's just cover let's just cover the top 4 teams we think we're going to make it.
No, I think we can cover a bit more because I think Chengdu is an interesting team to cover here. Because I think that the Hunters can actually make a bit of a run. Because I think that if the meta is as wild as some people are making it out to be, I think there's a legitimate chance that Chengdu can make it. They're sort of the LA Gliders are my dark horse of North America, where I think that they're a 6th seed, but I think that they can end up being like a 3rd seed, if not somehow sneak into that top 2. I think that Chengdu is sort of that team for APAC. So I actually have Chengdu beating the Spitfire. I have New York picking Seoul, beating Seoul. Chengdu beating the Spark. Are we on the same page here, or is this where we differ?
So I had London Spitfire being Chengdu, but I don't think I know enough about London Spitfire to really make a confident decision on that.
Yeah.
So I'm just gonna. I would say my bracket's a little bit wonky. I think Seoul, Guangzhou Charge, and Shanghai Dragons are all going to be up there.
See, I actually have Seoul losing to New York in that round, and I had them going to the point where they don't even make losers, right? Yeah, if you lose in that round, you don't even make losers. So my top 4 are still New York, Chengdu, Shanghai, and Guangzhou. Because at the end of the day, I just think that, man, if it's a crazy meta where crazy things are happening, I think Chengdu's just going to put Eamon on the ball and they're just going to run wild. Like, they have been using hectic metas even when it wasn't a hectic meta. Even like when arguably the most structured meta we've ever seen, which was GOATs, right? Chengdu is still running ball last year and seeing success. I know it's a slightly different team, but it's not that different. With their DPS and how good Eamon is on the ball, like, I think ball will definitely see some viability with this new patch. And I actually think they're going to be a really dangerous team. So those are my top 4. And then I have Shanghai picking Chengdu, though. I don't think Shanghai, as good as I think Chengdu will be, I think it's risky to put them above New York immediately. And I have Guangzhou beating New York. I then have New York beating Chengdu, and I had them losing at that point in time. But I still think they're the dark horse where they could upset one of these teams. Then I actually have New York upsetting Guangzhou Charge as that second team. I have Shanghai going through, and I actually have New York going through.
Okay, I have Shanghai and Guangzhou just because I'm making the safe bet right there.
Yeah, which I think is a pretty reasonable thing. I mean, the Charge have shown that they're a really good team all season long, and obviously they've definitely been the second team.
Yeah.
Alongside Shanghai, I just think, man, I like experience. I like the fact that New York's been here before. I know they've had some poor performances. I think Hotba is really flexible off tank, so if he does have to play the Hog or something like that, I think he can do it. I know Mono can play any main tank role, and I think he's good enough to play other roles if need be. Yeah. Hoxall is so good. This team's just so talented. I think that they're going to pull it out. And then let's go to the grand finals here.
Yeah.
What do you think is going to happen there? Because this is interesting.
This is so hard. We don't have any catalog. We don't have any data.
But that's why it's fun. It kind of comes down to what teams do you think are better? Is it the NA teams or is it the APAC teams? Or is it going to be a shock for Shanghai?
Look, I think Korean talent is better in general.
I don't disagree.
And I think that San Francisco Shock has a lot of Korean talent, more than Philadelphia. So I'm kind of like I'm saying San Francisco beats Guangzhou Charge, Shanghai beats Philly. And then I think Philly is going to pull it out against Guangzhou in the losers bracket.
I have so we're the exact same. I have New York, but same thing.
Yeah. Then San Francisco Shock being Shanghai Dragons to go to the final. Then Shanghai being Philly, and then San Francisco winning close 4-3 against Shanghai in the final.
I think that's arguably the best case scenario.
Yes. It makes sense in my mind. It makes sense that I think that, you know, Shanghai is like just the best team in APAC, and I think that then it goes Shanghai or San Francisco Shock, and Philly really close behind them, and then Guangzhou a little bit farther down.
So I think the problem is I think the Shock is the best team last year, the best team this year. I stand by that. I think that I think for a long time, I thought NA was the better region. And I think people have now sort of thought, because it might turn into this dive meta, that everyone's sort of saying APAC's the way to go. And I kind of agree, because they've just been running dive all year long. And now they're running into a dive situation where they're, you know, that's playing to their strengths. And they might the ball might fall in their court. So I definitely have them beating Philadelphia the first time around. I still like Philadelphia's roster better. I still think on paper, they are the better team. And I do agree that Shanghai beats them the first time, because I think that, you know, Philadelphia would have just went to Korea, wherever the finals taking place, someplace in Asia. They have a 2-week quarantine. I think that actually benefits Philadelphia, allows them to sit there and scrim more. I think while they're in Korea, they're going to be able to play other Korean teams, or APAC teams, sorry. I don't know specifically where they're going to be. Whereas Shanghai won't be able to play other North American teams. And I still, on paper, think that Philadelphia is better. And if it is a double off tank, they have Fury and Poco. And I think that's so dangerous. Or Popo, whatever. I forget to say. Poco. So dangerous of a double off tank duo. That's like that. If it is Hog Zarya, I don't think there's a team with 2 better off tanks in the entire league. Like, this just might fall right in Philly's lap, where they actually might be the best team in the league. I think between Carpe, Hisu, and Ivy, they can cover every base ever. If it is Sombra, Hisu is incredible Sombra. And between Carpe and Ivy and EQO, you have whatever other hero you need available. And then between Boombox and Funny Astro's one of the best Lucios in the league. I think Lucio might be played. If not, you still have Alarm, who's an absolute monster among men, an argument MVP candidate. So, I do think that everybody wants to see San Francisco versus Shanghai in the finals. I think Philly's going to play spoiler, and actually, after they lose the first match, go through the Asian bracket, get more used to the Korean style of play, come back, win the losers, and you're going to see Shock beat Philly 4-2 in the finals for the repeat.
You know what? That's a really good justification for why Philly's going to be in the finals. That's hard to... It makes sense. That makes sense. You know what? A lot of it's dependent on meta, though.
Yeah, because you're right. If it is a dive meta, like we've seen that Shanghai can be a dominant team for dive, right? They've been a dominant team the past couple of tournaments. They've ran dive whenever they have the opportunity to. Flood up, they're stacked, right? Void, Fearless. Fearless is an amazing monkey. Their backline's incredible. Their DPS lineups, they're so good all around. So, man, I cannot wait for this tournament.
It's gonna be fun. It's gonna be fun to watch.
And then obviously we'll come back with you guys once it's all done, and we'll do our updated brackets once we know more, and we'll just do that until it's over. Then we'll start our off-season speculation. So stay tuned for that. I guess we pretty much covered it. I think both of us. You have the Shock winning too. I think they're just too good of a team. We'll just end it with the question of the day, which is how far can the Defiant go, Chris? Because this is a Defiant podcast. And even though we've talked about a bunch of different teams, and most of us sort of agree that they're going to be out either 2 straight or 1 win and then 2 straight, what is the ceiling for a team like this? Could we be the dark horse that nobody's suspecting?
No. We're losing. First game. Out. I don't think we do anything, man.
You can't be so pessimistic and not at least justify it a little bit.
Damn it.
Justify it a bit.
I'm just saying, like, we keep on making excuses for why they haven't been performing, and they're like, I'll be different next time, I'll be different next time. It's not. It's just simply not. I don't have any, like, the only win condition I see is if Chauffeur comes back and comes back with this, this chip on his shoulder, but I don't really see him coming back. Like, I don't know where he is. I'm not that confident about that. And even when they weren't having the excuse of we're not focusing on this patch, like, they still weren't performing.
We got 4th place at the Summer Showdown.
Yeah, but that was a long time ago.
But even the Countdown Cup, we played the Gladiators, right? Lost in 5. Like, we looked pretty decent in the Countdown Cup. Now, mind you, that was another Agilities Genji. I know what you're saying.
Yeah, and we also didn't win. We got to stop being like, yeah, it's great they almost won, but they're just not winning. They're still not winning.
Yeah, I don't disagree.
So I am normally very, very extremely, you guys have seen this, we've been very positive on the team for a long time. We're at the end of the season. They just haven't given me enough reason to believe that they're going to make it past the first round.
For me, I obviously don't disagree. Even me picking them over Atlanta, I think is drinking the Kool-Aid a little bit. But for me, it was sort of, I watched their previous game versus the Dallas Fuel, and there was actually a lot of stuff that I liked. Again, I thought the tank line looked good between Nevix and Numlocked. I thought the DP, the back line looked really good. Cruz looked like a good Mercy. Kareem was really good on the Ana. If he can play Ana, that's a really good portion for this team. Logix was making insane plays. And I know Zik had a bad game. But if you replace Zix, Sombra with sure fours, you're replacing a pretty big weak point with arguably your strength. Like, that is not just like a gain. It is it's an exponential gain. You know what I mean? Like, that is somebody coming in and turning what is arguably a weakness into the strength of the team, and then everything else sort of just falls into place. I think you can really see something special in that regard. But it would take a lot. And it would take Schiffer coming back playing a really good Sombra. And it would take Cruz being on the Mercy and Kareem being on the Ana and Logix being Logix. But, man, if they're on, I think there's still a possibility that this team can do it.
Yeah, like I said, that's the one thing. You want excuses, like, you can't anymore. You just have to look at some point. You just have to look at the result, and it was a loss.
This is the final time they're ever going to show up. Now's the time, and I mean, I wish them nothing but the best. Obviously, even though you're pessimistic, obviously you're rooting for them. Obviously, we're going to show our support once it comes to it.
I want them to win. Don't get me wrong. I would love for them to win. Yep. I just don't think it's going to happen.
Yeah, I kind of agree. I don't fully agree. I think it's a closer chance than you give it, but I definitely understand where you're coming from.
Anyway, not to be too pessimistic at the end of this. Once again, still a die-hard Toronto fan.
Absolutely.
I will burn red. I guess my blood will be red. Yeah. Well,
burn blue is Dallas Fuel's tagline, so maybe not.
Wrong one.
Yeah. You will rise together.
I will rise with you. We'll rise.
We will rise together.
We die from this.
We're not going to heaven, bro. Even if we go down, dude, we're not going to heaven. Okay, I'm sorry to tell you, dude.
If you guys like this video, leave us a message. Leave us a subscribe. Come to my door. Have a chat with me.
Hit us up. And let us know what your thoughts are, guys. Like, how far do you think the Toronto Defiant can go? Right? Is this a team that's going to go 2 straight and get knocked out? Is this a team that you think can make it to the top 4 just like they did with the Summer Showdown? Please let us know your thoughts in the comment section down below. And also, who's going to win the whole thing? Is it going to be a Shanghai Shock Finals? Is it going to be a Shanghai Philadelphia? Let us know your thoughts down below. And as always, guys, thank you for watching and enjoy.
Enjoy.